You're watching TVC Breakfast. The fight against corruption is one of the pillars of the Buhari administration, and there are renewed calls for the president to give assent to the Audit Service Commission bill.
Supporters of the bill say it will empower the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, who has the constitutional mandate of auditing all accounts of the Federation, to ensure transparency in government transactions. The bill was passed by the House of Representatives in April 2016, transmitted to the Senate for concurrence.
And the Senate passed the bill rather in March 2018. It was harmonized and forwarded to President Buhari in January. The president has neither assented or declined assent to the bill. Joining me now is the Executive Director, Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative, Olusegun Elemo. It's good to have you join me right now, Segun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, make us understand. The point there is, amongst other issues from the election to other bills that went to the president, and there was so much noise and so much talk about it, the Audit Service Commission bill didn't get the kind of attention. Talk to us about the bill. What is it all about?
Yeah, so the bill is supposed to empower the Auditor General for the Federation, both financially and administratively.
Okay.
As it is currently, the legal powers for the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation is derived from the Audit Ordinance Act of 1956.
1956.
1956.
That is before independence.
Exactly. It shows you our approach to fighting corruption in Nigeria. It shows you, it gives an indication of how unserious we are as a country. The new bill is supposed to give the Auditor General the administrative and financial independence.
Yeah, when you break it down so we understand this administrative independence.
So for instance,
what is he not able to do now, and what can he do with the bill?
So for instance now, it's funded through the Ministry of Finance,
okay,
which is not supposed to be so. This is the supreme audit institution for the country. It's the foremost accountability office for the country. It's supposed to be an independent institution on its own. So being funded by the Ministry of Finance.
Puts it at the mercy
of the executive.
Oh, okay.
It can be intimidated, it can be threatened, and all of that. And its tenure is not guaranteed, or it's not secured. Because of that structure. Also, he cannot hire his staff. He has to depend on the Federal Civil Service to hire for him, which means that ensuring competence and and capacity is actually not at his disposal. He can't call the shots in that regard.
Wow. So if we compare to other countries, we have made comparison between Nigeria and Ghana and South Africa and Kenya and some other African countries. Yes. It seems they have their laws intact already. Apparently.
It's only Nigeria, when you compare Nigeria with Kenya, with Ghana, with Sierra Leone, with the United Kingdom, with South Africa. It's only Nigeria that doesn't have a modern audit law. And it's pathetic because of our posture on the continent. And even for instance, the mission of the Audit Office of Nigeria, supposed to provide leadership for supreme audit institutions on the continent. It's not able to do that right now. The global rating for supreme audit institutions across the world, I think it's 1 to 5. Countries like South Africa, like Kenya, like the United Kingdom, of course. United Kingdom, I think it's on 4. South Africa is on 3. Nigeria is probably on 1 or 2.
Wow.
It just shows you. And then when you now look at the level of corruption that's happening within, take for instance the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index for 2018. Nigeria is rated, far behind of all of these other countries.
But if this law is passed, what can the Auditor General or the entire office really do differently? Apart from the issue of the capacity, the security of his tenure, and then the independence of finances. When it comes to the actual fight against corruption, what is he going to do differently?
I think the difference now would be that, for instance, the Auditor General can issue summons.
Okay.
to any public officials found wanting. The Auditor General also, the bill provides the timeline for legislators through the public accounts committees, the timeline for review of audit reports, as well as publishing their own recommendations. Because ordinarily, when you have the Auditor General submit to Parliament the audit reports, so the Parliament is supposed to review the audit findings through its committees on public accounts, and then make recommendations to the executive to correct some of those anomalies that have been highlighted by the Auditor General. But hitherto, we've not had that kind of situation.
All right. We have to leave it here now. Thank you very much, Olusegun Elemo, for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. You're watching TVC Breakfast. The fight against corruption is one of the pillars of the Buhari administration, and there are renewed calls for the president to give assent to the Audit Service Commission bill.
Supporters say the bill will empower the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, who has the constitutional mandate of auditing all accounts of the Federation. Now this to ensure transparency in government transactions. The bill forwarded to President Buhari in January has neither been assented to, neither has the President declined assent to the bill. Joining me now is Executive Director, Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative, Olusegun Elemo. Good morning. Talking about this issue of the assent to the bill, there's a bit of some confusion as to the delay or whether it indeed has been assented to. What for you is the true position?
I think the position now is that the bill has not been assented to. It was sent to the presidency on the 6th of January. The presidency requested review of the bill.
Sent it back?
No. Just, usually when a bill is forwarded to the president for assent, they will probably want to review it and know the true position, whether the president should go ahead and assent. I think they got 4 MDAs to review the bill, the content of the bill sent by the Parliament. I think one of those ministries, the Ministry of Justice, I think that in general was part of the people who reviewed. I think all the reviews from what we got, the information we got, all the reviews were positive, so which should have given the indication, a go-ahead for the president to assent. So the reviews came in 48 hours after January 6th. So by January 9, the review had gone in, and then we hoped we're hoping that the president will just go ahead and assent, but up to now he hasn't.
Looking at the gains now of this bill, there's this issue about when you compare Nigeria with other countries within Africa, and even looking at the bigger picture, the UK now. Yeah. There's an issue of Nigeria has more or less the largest population when you compare these countries, but then this bill hasn't been passed, and there's also the issue of the Auditor General of the Office of the Federation, who, the number of years is not guaranteed. It also doesn't, give him independence now to work. How will this bill correct all these lapses?
So I think it's just an anomaly, because when you look at all the indication, for instance, the SDG 2030, if we don't have, an adequate mechanism of fighting corruption, I don't see us achieving the 2030 agenda. Also, the president made commitments to the Open Government Partnership in 2016. I think our commitments as a country are under threat if we don't have a proper and adequate, audit office to fight corruption. Like you mentioned, the tenure of the Auditor General is not secured, so he can do his work. As we speak right now, the Auditor General is dependent on the executive to do its work, because he gets his funding from the Ministry of Finance. He gets his staff recruited by the Federal Civil Service.
Even the talk about funding is also an issue.
I think it's important
when you compare it with the overall budget.
Exactly. I think it's also important to highlight this. Between 2012 and 2017, the budget for the Audit Office had gone down from 5 billion to 2.7 billion. Which shows an indication of systemic crippling of that office. So those who are cutting the budget of the audit office knows why they're cutting the budget of the audit office. They probably want to render that office incapacitated and not able to promote accountability as it's supposed to.
And then this talk, we seem to be focusing on a person, the office of the Auditor General of the Federation. Is it more so about the person or about a system that works,
It's
not
about
just
an
at the
institution.
federal level, but, you know, across
It's
the
about
country?
an institution. It's not about the person of the Auditor General. So you have Auditor Generals come and go. It's about the institution itself. And it goes on to subnational audits in states. So you have the same thing you have at the federal level at states, but we have to get the big picture first before we now go to subnational. So if we get a proper audit office at the federal, then you can have states also key in, and then they can, you know, it can trickle down transparency, accountability, and citizen participation.
Olusegun Eleme, thanks a lot for your time. And
Thank you for having me.
Fight against corruption is one of the pillars of President Buhari's administration, and there are renewed calls for the president to give assent to the Audit Service Commission bill.
Supporters of the bill say it will empower the office of the Auditor General of the Federation, who has the constitutional mandate of auditing all accounts of the Federation, this to ensure transparency in government sanctions.
All right, the bill forwarded to President Buhari in January, but has neither assented or declined assent to the bill. Nigerians are still waiting to hear the outcome of that. All right, joining me now is the Executive Director of Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative, Olusegun Elemo. Olusegun, it's good to have you join me right now.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, when it comes to the fight against corruption, President Buhari has made fight against corruption as one of his cardinal points, even right from 2015. So when it comes to that fight, there is no two ways about it. Everyone knows that he sees corruption as something that has to be fought with all the strength and ability. Now, this bill, the Audit Service Commission bill that hasn't been passed, if it is passed right now, how will the Auditor General fight corruption differently from what EFCC or ICPC is doing?
Yeah, so the Auditor General, let me just say, like you mentioned, the president seems to be committed to fighting corruption. He said that if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. If he signs the bill today, what will be done differently is that the Auditor General will now have financial and administrative independence, like I said earlier. He will be able to recruit his staff and bring on board, personnel who have the capacity to audit, MDAs. Also, parastatals, the big ones, who have always not submitted their audited accounts for comment by the Auditor General. And I don't want to mention any of them. But you and I know there are some parastatals that don't submit their audited accounts. And National Assembly also highlighted this in passing the Federal Audit Service Commission bill. So they will now be forced to submit their audited accounts for comment by the Auditor General. Also, what will be done differently is that the Auditor General also will now be constitutionally mandated to publish audit reports as soon as it's submitted to Parliament, which now gives citizens that leeway to engage.
But in as much as the Auditor General will become independent financially and administratively from what the specifications of the bill is and what you said,
yeah.
When it comes to political interference, that is another challenge that has always been in so many of our institutions. How shielded from political interference will the Auditor General be?
No, I think generally, not just in Nigeria, there will always be political interference. But I think what should be paramount now is that can we set up this institution as it is supposed to be set up? So
let's start from there.
Exactly. Right. So if we set up the institution properly, then we can deal with political interference. But now, when the institution itself is not even set up and is set up currently to depend on the executive, I don't think the institution itself is in a position to do anything, and that's why it's not been able to do anything. For instance, when you compare, again, the Auditor General's, the audit office in Nigeria with that of Kenya, South Africa, Sierra Leone, and the UK. For instance, the UK, the Auditor General in the UK can charge, for audit fees. They can surcharge public officials. And that's what the new audit bill is going to do. It means that if a public official commits any infraction, the Auditor General can say, okay, your salary will be deducted in this amount to
it's like query, it's like issuing a query.
He can issue query.
Where there's a sanction.
He can issue query. He can surcharge their salaries. He can issue summons. He can even issue arrest warrants in this case. But as it is currently,
but wouldn't that be conflicting somehow with what the ICPC and EFCC are doing?
So the ICPC and the EFCC, they need the data from the Auditor General to do their work. They don't get that right now, or they get it in very limited form.
Or wait for petitions from public, for those who are involved.
Exactly. So what they should be doing, I think they have also come to understand, particularly the anti-corruption bodies, that the data from the Auditor General is very, very critical to their work, because the Auditor General, he has a way of checking systemic failures, which these other institutions now depend on for their, investigative and prosecutorial activities.
That data, all right.
Exactly.
Olusegun Elemo, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Right.